India is the second most populous country in the world and the seventh largest in area. It has the fifth largest economy in the world by nominal GDP and the third largest by GDP purchasing power parity. India also was the third largest military spender in the world in the year 2019, according to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. The country has seen rapid economic growth for the last 2 decades and is well on its way to become the third largest economy by nominal GDP by 2030. So the question remains, can India ever become an economic superpower with the likes of the USA and China? Also, can India ever surpass the USA and China as the most powerful economy in the world? And that is exactly what we are going to discuss in today's episode. Hello my dear darling people, my name is Sanatan Pagare and thanks for tuning into Bright Myth. Let's start with the history. British economist Angus Maddison in the year 2003 published his book The World Economy: Historical Statistics, in which he calculated the sizes of different economies around the world for the last 2 millennia. He claimed in his book that India was the largest economy in the world until the 1700s, when Western powers started growing economically and eventually took over India as the most dominant economies in the world by the 1800s. China also took over India as the largest economy in the world for a brief period of 200 years between the 1500s and the 1700s. But India reclaimed her top spot once again by the mid-1700s. India controlled over 30% of the world economy at the beginning of the first millennia. According to Maddison's calculations, it can be concluded that India was the largest economy in the world for almost 1500 years. And no other country, empire, or region in the history of the world ever had such an economic dominance for such a long period of time. But how was the region of India able to do that? There are a number of reasons behind India holding on to the top position for so long, and we are going to briefly discuss some of these reasons in this episode. India sits on the Indian tectonic plate, which smashed into the Eurasian plate and in turn created the tallest mountain range in the world, the Himalayas. The Himalayas are the source of most of major North Indian rivers such as the Ganga and the Yamuna, where the post-Indus River Valley civilization India flourished. This part of India is one of the most fertile regions in the world, which helped India to sustain a larger population than any other region during ancient times. And as we all know, the country with the largest population in the world is bound to have the largest economy. But this was the case when the population in India grew at the same rate as other parts of the world, sometimes even slower. This happened because India already had a head start on the rest of the world when it came to population, as the Indus River Valley civilization, which is widely believed to be the precursor to the modern Indian civilization, also had a larger population than any other civilization of that time. Also, the location of India not just provided the Indian people the best environment to survive and grow, but also made it very easy for them to do business with the rest of the world. India sat right in the middle of the trading routes connecting the East and the West, which made India an important economic hub in the ancient times. India also had a very easy access to the sea, as it is a peninsula surrounded by water from 3 sides, which made it possible for the Indian people to trade their spices and goods with the people from either side of the world. India was also the place where ancient technologies like the technology to produce sugar or the technology to mine for diamonds or precious metals came a long time ahead of the rest of the world, all of which provided India a significant economic advantage over other regions. But India started to lose its edge over the world by the late 1700s, and the European powers slowly overtook India as the most dominant economies in the world. The Europeans started colonizing the world to extract resources, and by the time they reached the Indian shores, India was already broken into hundreds of small kingdoms which were up for grabs, and that is exactly what the Europeans did. By the mid-1800s, the East India Company controlled most of the Indian subcontinent, and under the company rule, India went from being a world-renowned exporter of fine goods to just some region administered by the British for their benefit. By the time India got its independence in 1947, it was one of the poorest regions in the world, accounting for only 2% of the global GDP. The newly formed government in New Delhi right after independence adopted a number of very protectionist policies which made it very hard for foreign companies to do business in India. The government took this route wary of its past experience with foreign enterprises. After all, the East India Company was also a foreign company which came to India to do business. During the next 2 decades, the 50s and the 60s, India introduced a set of very hard rules and regulations for doing business in the country, which came to be referred to as the License Raj. These sets of rules were a bureaucratic nightmare which were introduced so that the business practices across country could be fairly monitored and could help curbing corruption. But instead of helping the Indian economy, the license Raj ended up making India one of the worst places in the world to do business in, because it was so hard to get through the bureaucracy involved in setting up a business. This also, instead of coping with the problem of corruption, actually ended up making it worse because the people and businessmen found it easier to bribe the officials to get the work done instead of working through the bureaucracy. But believe me when I say that it gets worse from here, because it actually does. In the 70s, India started adopting a number of socialist policies. It nationalized most of its major industries like steel production, rail transport, energy production, banking, and many more. It made private participation in such businesses across country almost impossible. And as we all know, when there are not enough private players in a market, the opportunities for the people of such countries to work and prosper drop exponentially. So you can probably guess what happened next. The country, which was already very poor, got even poorer. India also went through a number of armed conflicts with its neighbors, which hit the country's economy very badly. But if you think the politicians in New Delhi, after facing so many problems, tried to make it easy for the people to do business, then you're like super wrong. India doubled down on its Soviet-style socialist policies. Although being a liberal democracy, India used 5-year plans like a communist socialist republic. India was basically a mix of both capitalism and socialism. Now, if a country wants to survive in this world, no matter how protectionist it is, it still has to do some business with other countries. And so did India. But most of the business which India did since its independence till the 90s was with the USSR, which made the country increasingly more and more dependent on Moscow over the years. India sometimes even observed a negative growth between the 50s and the 90s, even though it was so poor. Now before we go any further, if you've liked the episode so far, please make sure to like the episode, share the episode, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon for future content. This video is also available on IGTV, and there's a link for Brightman's Instagram page in the description. This episode is also available on all the podcasting platforms like Spotify, iTunes, and Google Podcasts. The links for those are also available in the description. Please use those links and follow us over there, it would really help us a lot. And if you want to follow us on Instagram, the links for that are in the description as well. And with that said, let's jump back into the episode. The USSR collapsed in 1991, which shook the Indian economy to its core. The country was at the verge of going bankrupt, so it asked the International Monetary Fund for a bailout. But the IMF, before providing India with this money, made the country to agree on some terms and conditions, which involved opening up its economy for the world, slashing down different rules and regulations of the license Raj, and liberalizing the Indian economy as a whole. India agreed on these terms to save itself from falling into recession and going bankrupt. The opening up of the economy changed everything for the Indian Union. Now, it was possible for foreign companies to do business in India. And not just that, the deregulation of different sectors allowed local businesses to grow as well. Now there were private players in almost every sector, all of which in turn helped the Indian economy to grow at rates which were never seen before. The economy skyrocketed and grew from a GDP of a little over 300 billion in 1990 to almost 3 trillion in 2020. But how did that happen? Well, India benefited from a number of different factors which worked in her favor. First of all, India's large size attracted businesses from around the world to invest in India. The market in India was so massive that it was basically impossible to be neglected by multinational companies. These MNCs started setting up shop in India and started employing more and more Indian citizens, which in turn helped the people of India get wealthier, and the per capita income of an everyday Indian citizen grew exponentially. The liberalization of the Indian economy happened during the age of the computers, and India had one of the largest pools of software engineers in the world who could also speak English. And the software giants in America took notice of that and started outsourcing their software manufacturing to India. This helped India to become one of the biggest exporters of IT in the world. And all of this happened because the wages of these engineers in India was not even a tenth of a worker with similar skills in America. And companies like Microsoft, Google, IBM, etc. took an advantage of that, and they started investing more and more into the country. Also, a number of Indian software giants like Infosys, TCS, and Wipro sprung up in the country, accelerating the IT boom and in turn the Indian economy even further. Not just that, India benefited from the low cost of labor in a number of other fields as well. And one of those fields was the outsourcing of the customer service by different companies around the world to call centers in India. India also started allowing private players in its banking sector. All of this helped create thousands of jobs for the Indian people, and India's economy doubled every 5 years. And as you can probably guess, most of this growth came from the development in the service sector, unlike in China where the growth took place because of manufacturing. All of this growth also helped India lift hundreds of millions of its citizens out of poverty. And according to the World Poverty Clock in 2020, India has a little over 3% of its population living in extreme poverty, which is still a massive number considering the size of India's population. But it still is very impressive because we are talking about a country which not very long ago had more than 600 million poor people. So this was the first part of the two-part video series on Can India Ever Become a Superpower, in which we discussed the economic history of India and we also discussed where it stands today. But what could happen in the future? That is something which we will discuss in the next video, so stay tuned. And with that said, see you in the next episode. Bye!